My name is Alexis McGrigg, and I am the 2023 Mississippi State Fellow for Visual Arts. For me, it seems like I'm kind of a representative for the state of Mississippi and telling a narrative and a perspective about life in Mississippi, but not just life in Mississippi, a perspective about the Black experience in Mississippi, and me being a person that has been born here, lived here at least 2/3 of my life, and being able to just have an alternative perspective in the South. I think being an artist in the South, we have a very unique perspective about our way of being. I think we move a little more slowly, we breathe a little more slowly, we take more time to kind of just live and interact with each other. And that affects our experiences, that affects the way we love one another, that it affects the way that we think about making artwork. It affects our experience and our feeling about how we exist in the world. And I think that impacts the way that I think about my work on a broader scale. In some ways it's kind of experimental. I have a lot of trial and error before I get to these finished products that people are able to see. I'm always kind of like trying different media and seeing what works, what doesn't work. And my process has kind of changed gradually over the years, but I feel like I'm always taking little pieces of each mistake or each error and using that within the work. At one time I was using charcoal, which then progressed to acrylic, which then progressed to more experimental water-based media, which is how I ended up working with fabric dyes. And kind of going through that trial and error, I've kind of developed this process that I feel like is unique to my way of thinking and my way of working. Overall, in terms of like the conceptual ideas, not only are the materials kind of vast and luscious and fluid when I think about my work as a whole and thinking about celestial space and alternate planes of existence, those things seem vast and fluid and luscious and rich and full of particulate. And the material is actual like particulate, thinking about fabric dyes. I would like to use my state fellowship funds to work with an established artist as sort of an apprentice, doing sort of an apprenticeship. I won't say who the artist is because I don't know if they're going to agree to it yet, but I kind of want to work with someone, for example, rest in heaven, Sam Gilliam, someone like Sam Gilliam, who's from that period of artists who are color-filled artists or from the Washington Color School. I would love to work with an established artist like that, to do an apprenticeship and shadow them and just see what their experiences has been like being an abstract artist in this field. And just learn from them. I want to hear their stories. I want to hear what their life has been like, what their process has been like, so that I can absorb it. Maybe I will learn some guidance. Maybe I'll even gain a mentor from it. That's my hope. In my work, I talk about these sort of theoretical planes of existence. I think about three kind of alternate spaces. I think about our present space in which the human body physically exists, that we can see, we can touch, and we can feel. I also think about an intermediate space between Earth and the farthest boundary of outer space. That souls, because most of my work speaks about the soul without the body. So kind of attempting to imagine or examine what it looks like for a soul to travel through space. So that second space, the intermediate space, is the zone in which they travel. And where are they traveling to? They're traveling to this third space, which I think of as the furthest boundary of our universe. We live in sort of a multiverse, universes on universes on universes. So thinking about these souls kind of going back and forth into existence, out of existence, and taking on a human form, but also leaving. So in my work, I'm constantly trying to examine what is that mode of travel, what does it look like, how long does it take, what's the environment made up of. And so I use these fabric dyes and particulate to develop the space, and I think of these forms emerging and expanding into these particulate of color, and the soles are light filled and they're kind of opening up into this void. And so my process is kind of thinking about how something closes into itself in the micro and expanding out of itself in this macro field. It's kind of just a back and forth. I need to answer the question that is unanswerable. How does this happen, and how can I best convey to the viewer what that travel looks like? I work in layers. Usually what I'm doing, I'll take the fabric dyes and I kind of work in a circular motion around the canvases. I think of myself like a Jackson Pollock. I'm not Jackson Pollock, but the way that he works, if you've seen films of him working, he kind of like goes around the canvas, kind of dropping paint. My method is a little bit different, but it's sporadic, it's intuitive, really. So I'll work around the canvas, kind of spreading the paint, building these layers of particulate. And then once I've built the layers to a degree where I feel like I'm starting to see these forms emerge, then I'll come back and I'll start doing these large sort of pools of water and moving them around. I try to let the water produce whatever movement it's going to naturally produce and let it sit and soak into the canvas. So there's a process of that, maybe like 8 to 10 layers of doing that. And then I'll start to work with the forms that are emerging and start to pull them out of the surface. And that's when I start to begin to see the forms. People ask me, do I purposely try to envision specific people or specific figures? I don't. Usually the figures kind of emerge on their own and I work with what I see there. I'm in a transitional period in my practice where it's expanding. I feel like the works need to come out into the space. I think about installation, but going back to the drawing board, I want to experiment with more materials because there's much more that can be said, much more that can be done. So the work is never finished.